So these congresswomen, their comments are helping to fuel the rise of a dangerous, militant hard left. But that's okay, because we're going to win this election like nobody's ever seen before.
Welcome to the Journal Editorial Report. I'm Paul Gigot. That was President Trump Wednesday at a rally in Greenville, North Carolina, doubling down on his attacks on 4 freshman congresswomen for what he calls their anti-American political views. The night took an ugly turn when some in the crowd chanted "Send her back" in reference to Minnesota Representative Ilhan Omar, echoing the president's tweet from earlier in the week. The president on Thursday expressed regret about that chant, saying he disagreed with it. But is his feud with the 4 Democratic congresswomen setting the tone for his 2020 re-election campaign? Let's ask Wall Street Journal columnist Karl Rove, who served as senior advisor to President George W. Bush. So, Karl, welcome. You wrote this week for us that you thought that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and I assume some of these other women in her squad, are hurting Democrats and helping the Republicans. How so?
Well, they are so big a presence in social media and in the media generally that their left-wing views are getting as sort of an outsized attention. And so when Ocasio-Cortez puts out a draft of the Green New Deal that talks about cow flatulence and unspecified measures to restrict people from getting on planes to go take their vacations and a transformation of our entire society, it gets a lot of attention. And similarly, their views on things like Israel and the war on terror. I mean, just the first week of July, AOC called for the abolition of the Department of Homeland Security.
Okay,
so those people with box cutters can go get on planes.
So those views beginning to define the Democratic Party in the eyes of many swing voters. But Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, seems to get this because she's been criticizing them and trying to, I think, reduce their public, if not their public profile, at least their influence in Washington. But then you get the President of the United States interjecting himself into that debate. And with his comments on they should go back, has he undermined some of that benefit for Republicans?
He did, and with his tweet, and then it got carried to an even bigger level in his rally with people starting to chant "Send her back, send her back." I can't improve on the arguments that were laid out in this excellent Friday editorial in the Wall Street Journal on that issue. Yeah, but I think the president understood that. That's why he said in the cabinet meeting on Thursday, basically distanced himself from it. And I hope everybody heard what he had to say. The more the focus is on their ideas and their views and their values, and the less it is on them personally, the better off the president is in making the argument.
And I mean, I think that I'm hearing privately from a lot of Republicans, before in particular the president's expression of regret, but even afterwards, that they're really anxious about the Republican Party being maybe defined in the eyes of a lot of voters as anti-immigrant and creating their own group of deplorables with this kind of rhetoric.
Yeah, look, who are the key voters in the 2020 presidential election? Each side has its own base,
right? But
the election is ultimately going to be decided by people who are weakly linked to either party. In 2016, enough of those people voted for Donald Trump for him to win the election in the Electoral College. In 2018, a lot of them shifted their votes to Democrats for Congress, which is why Nancy Pelosi is Speaker of the House. So they're going to be won not by things that sort of create a sense that Donald Trump is uncomfortable with diversity, that he's uncomfortable with women, that he's uncomfortable with immigrants, but they're going to be won over by saying these people have values and views. These Democrat leaders are advocating things that are bad for our country. And the more he keeps it on the substance, the better off he is. Look, Nancy Pelosi, you talked about earlier. Yeah, she's fighting a two-front war. She understands that the Democrats are being simply overwhelmed. Whatever they're doing in the House of Representatives is being overwhelmed by the talk of impeachment and increasingly the talk by the squad of these sort of left-wing, lunatic, wacky ideas. And so she loved the fact that she got a moment to unify the Democratic Party and go on the offense, condemn the president's rhetoric, and stand her in better stead and her party in better stead with those swing voters. But ultimately, these left-wingers are going to undermine the Democratic Party unless somehow or another they're able to silence them or diminish their impact.
All right, let's for a bit turn to the Democratic presidential race. And Joe Biden seems to have really lost some ground since the first debate. How much trouble is he in, do you think? Can he survive these attacks?
Well, he can survive them, but he's got to get his sea legs underneath him and solidify his support. Think about it. He was at 41 in the Real Clear Politics average shortly after he announced. Now, that was unbelievably high.
Yeah, that was name recognition, a lot of it.
Yeah, name recognition, and he was dominating the news. But about 5-6 weeks later, he was down at 34, which is a respectable number and when you have the field as wide as it is now. But then he's down to about 26, 27 in the Real Clear Politics average, which means that he's lost about, a quarter of his support between when he stabilized and after the first debate. So he's got some trouble there. The interesting thing to me is that that all of this change in the field has not benefited Bernie Sanders. He's declined as well. So we now have essentially 4 plus 1 plus everybody else. The 4 are Biden, Harris, Warren, and Sanders, and then the 1 is Buttigieg, who has a lot of money and has some buzz, but doesn't yet have the poll numbers, and then everybody else is just part of the amorphous minor mob.
Yeah, one of the things that's really struck me, Karl, is that there's been no one else in the sort of moderate lane who's been the party who's been able to emerge as an alternative to Joe Biden. And why do you think that is? Is it just that they're too obscure, too many of them? Or is it that the party is, the energy in the party is really with Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, Kamala Harris, and Mayor Pete, and those on the left?
Yeah, look, the energy among activists is clearly with the left. And the interest of the media is clearly with the left and with Pete Buttigieg. Is not so much in Biden. But yet what we know is that Biden, that so-called moderate, the liberal/moderate lane, is the biggest lane inside the Democratic Party.
Right.
What we've got is Sanders, Warren, Kamala Harris, and others trying to carve up a slice that's basically, a plurality, not a majority of the Democrats. What's going to be interesting to me in the next debate is Amy Klobuchar, who's going to be in the first night's debate with Warren and Sanders. Is she going to try and display herself as the moderate alternative to them and thereby begin to crowd some of that space in the event Biden begins to fall? But right now, hard to see how somebody in that third tier, 4 plus 1 plus everybody else, she's a part of everybody else. Hard to see how they vaunt themselves up at this point, especially since her fundraising has been rather anemic.
Yeah, good to flag that. That'll be her a real opportunity. Thanks, Karl. Appreciate it.